I'm planning on doing some on plein air painting, so I want to explore art materials that travel well. And I'm going to start by exploring these watercolour markers. I've chosen a limited palette. I've got pink, purple, green and this grey, so a beautiful pure neutral thrown in that often makes the others' colours look beautiful. This is a Micador watercolour pen. You know, it's got one of those little reservoirs for water. I'm just getting that water to come down. Each time I add some marker, I'm going to come back in and add a controlled amount of colour. I've tried lots of these different watercolour reservoir pens. I just never like them. I think because I work so loosely and love using water that I inevitably go back to brush and water. I'm just going to persist in this. So this can be brilliant for on a plane where you can't get a little jar of water to start painting in. But I'm not planning on spending much time on a plane. My plan is to drive around pretty spots, and I'm just adding little bits of water. So my plan is to do on plein air. It does come with a little lid, but I don't find it really needs it. I have arthritis in my hands, and pressing on that little reservoir was really hard on my thumb, so I'm unlikely to take that away with me. I do find that these watercolour markers, this is the Faber-Castell brand, I do find that they don't love going into a wet surface, so I'm going to put on a limited amount of purple. Yeah, as soon as it gets too wet, the marker just stops working. This is where a watercolour pencil can be better. Yeah, that's just frustrating. So I'm going to compensate with a watercolour pencil. And drawing with a watercolour pencil into that wetness there is just so much fun. So this is a much better thing to do. And already I can see that when I start to pack my supplies, I might take a watercolour marker and a little reservoir, not this one, but another one, and then I will be able to enjoy the wet in wet process while that little layer dries. I'll now come back in with, is it dry enough to add purple? Let's see. Yeah, it's still quite wet. So I think I'll put in some leaves while it's in that wet state. So there's going to be a stem. Now these watercolour markers come with a fat end and a thin end. So with that fat end, I'm going to use the side of it to draw a stem and suggest that it comes up in between here. I'll be putting more berries in, so that's why I'm not completing it. That and just get thinner, and being a thick marker with a beautiful point, you can go thinner. I'm losing my mark here because it's that little bit damp. Just while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to put in a couple of leaves in that simple leaf shape. That's the fat end. I wonder what the thin end... it is thinner. I could make that thinner, I suppose. And then it's very tempting to go along and put in more leaves and just repeat that one, but I think what I'll do is either little pairs or a big one and perhaps yeah, I think that most of the greenery is going to be on the bottom half. Therefore, this would join there and this can come out, and I'll do another one. So what I'm doing there with the pen is using the angle, is using a quick stroke. I love that look of a quick stroke. I wonder if they could benefit for some grey inside them. Oh, that's lovely. Okay, so quick. And back to this thin one, because it's still a bit wet, and I'm thinking about the fact that I'll be travelling and I want some lovely ways to make this work so that I can do it anywhere. Okay, 2 leaves there, so perhaps some leaves come out here, and they're pointing, these are pointing up, so perhaps these will point down. And again, I'm just doing a fast stroke, so one will come out of there, and perhaps one comes straight out of there. And then it can join down like that. And go to the fat end and put in a fat detail. Yep. And a little bit of that grey again. And the beauty of grey is that it's a neutral and it's going to make other colours look beautiful, which makes me think I might put in a little bit of grey into my little berry-like flowers. I'm hoping they'll look more like a spray of flowers by the time I've finished. Here's all my small ones, and then each of the small ones are going to get softer looking because I'm going to do bigger ones. So some lovely little small ones there. Let's give it a little bit of, ooh, that purple is coming out. Look at that. It's leaking a tiny bit. I'm going to use that to my advantage. Leaking. I put too much up there. Okay, sometimes circling the existing ones and sometimes creating a new one. But every single mark is being bigger and hopefully a bit irregular. And then I think when we get down here, I'll just go back to the small. I'm basing that on having looked at lots of Australian natives. And I know that I'm not drawing an Australian native, but I really like how that happens often on the bottom of an Australian native. You get this concentration of like dotty bits. I'm feeling like this stem needs a little bit of work. But first, with the pink ones, I went outside and wet all of them. So now that I've got this purple, I'm going to move everything aside, and I'm not going to use this Micador. I'll, in the meantime, go searching for a better one. I'm going to use a brush, which is always my preferred method anyway. And with a brush and just water, I'm softening the inside of the purples, and I'm going to make them into round berry kind of shapes. And it's not, as I've said, that I'm not going for berries. I'm just going for like a spray of colour. Just try and wet the purple for now. And then there's all these little ones here. I'm going to reduce the amount of water. I'm touching my towel and just come in with these lovely ones here. Touch, 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 touch. I'm going to pick up some of that purple and just add a little bit of tiny detail. There's a big drip of water there. Get rid of it. Just turn it. Right, now, if I come back round to this angle, I've got dots here and dots there. I like that. These were done with the marker. That was done with the brush dipping into the marker. So I'm going to soften some of these dots, as in drag the colour in and out. Oh, I like that. Drag the colour in and out. Drag the colour in and out. I'm aiming each time to exit via the point, and that worked really nicely. Okay, I'm building slowly here to come up with a spray of flowers. Now, I've got this heavy purple bit just here, and I really quite like it. So I'm just going to get rid of my brush for a moment. I want to pad this area out even more. It's a Faber-Castell Brecht Dura Magnus, and the colour is magenta. These pencils have a number on them and a light fast rating, which is a beautiful sign of their quality. I'm just going to enjoy the beautiful moments that you get with a watercolour pencil when you touch into something wet. Some magenta into the leaves. That's how this beautiful pencil feels. Embellishing here. Little tiny dots. Oh, can't resist. Do the same up the top there. But if I do end up, in the car, I'm not going to splatter. If I end up on a train, I'm unlikely to splatter. I hope to end up on a train. I'm thinking of avoiding planes to some degree. I'll start with some smaller ones. Now I know I'm after rounds, but if I just suggest a part of the flower, that'll be so easy for me to come in and wet. Maybe a little one up there and perhaps some in here too. So there's a beautiful amount of repetition happening here. And although I'm repeating, I'm aiming for each one to be a little different. Just going to increase the amount of grey by dropping it into the existing ones. And I can't resist adding little dots each time I start the dotting process. There's something rather satisfying about putting dots in. Okay, time to turn it around and release some grey. It's just easier for my hand. It's one of the advantages on working on a block. That's the other thing that I'll be taking. Can you see how this is a block? All bound on all four sides. And it means you don't need a board, don't need to tape anything down. I'm just going around releasing this purple as I'm chatting to you there. Oh, it's doing a beautiful thing. All right, I've just zoomed in there so you can see what it's doing. So as I wet the little sections of berries, it's pushing into the grey and making this beautiful mark. I'm feeling like some of these need to be softened on the outside as well. I'm just going to go around and soften. Beautiful watercolour pencil. This central vein I'm going to make a little more obvious and come in with my grey on the other side of the central stem that's holding it all up. Quite enjoying the balance of these two going up and these two coming down. So I think I will go back to the pink, which is where I began, and perhaps I will just put in some lovely big shapes. Just thinking about ways to plump it out. Perhaps it would come out, in fact, and touch the leaf. Okay. There. There. I have to just balance it off with some little pops of pink. It's a little bit damp there, so as soon as you try, it resists you a bit. It's kind of like, almost like it goes and stops you. Okay, let's release the colour in those soft pink ones. Not much water on my brush at all. Release and release. I'm getting rid of that green underneath, which it did. And release and release, and really great if they touch. I'm surprised at how dramatically a organic object can look more beautiful, more organic when you make all the little shapes touch. Oh, that's lovely. That's given the design a little bit of a lift down there. Wash my brush. Now back into the pleasure zone of this magenta pencil. Yep, that's quite nice. Give them a little bit of interest. I might be creating a beautiful focal area just down there. Right, while that's drying, let's put in some more green leaves. So this is very wet. I'm left-handed. I'm going to turn it around to make it easier for my hand. Do that all the time. Also, then I'm going to be working upside down. So these two come up and these two go down. So I could repeat it, or I could invert it. But I think it might look a bit odd if I just have it too matchy-matchy. Right, fat end, and the leaves are going to get smaller. So the berry-like blooms get smaller as you go up the lupin. I think I can fit in a little green leaf there, and perhaps a little green one in there. Then I'm not going to match it with the same spot. I'm going to make sure I go up high. Oh, there's a lovely gap there. There, and I want to get smaller, much smaller. Flowers really are amazing when you start to stare at them and draw them. I think I've learnt such a lot about biology, plant biology of course, just by drawing plants. final touches. In terms of travelling, I think this colour combination was fantastic. I need to get a better pen that doesn't require so much pressure. And in fact, now that I'm pushing on the end of this Micador reservoir, I can feel that it is a very hard one. I'm sure that there is a better one out there on the market. Love to hear your thoughts on that one. These markers are absolutely beautiful. I love them. They're watercolour markers, but having that pencil for those moments, a watercolour pencil for those moments when it was wet, but imagine that I'm sitting on a train and I don't have access to a hairdryer, that's for sure, and I don't want to waste time waiting for it to dry. The watercolor pencil really filled in those moments, so I think that was pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with the outcome, and I think when I go traveling I will definitely be taking watercolor markers, some watercolor pencils, and something with a reservoir. It's a handy idea. I just need to improve upon that one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.